The last scroll copied in that building was still wet when the ceiling fell. Everyone knows the Library of Alexandria burned. What nobody asks is this: what was happening inside it when the fire arrived? Were they working? Did anyone know? In 48 BC, a fire nobody ordered destroyed what 300 years had built. One night, one wind direction, one decision made by a man who was not thinking about books. We're going back to that night, 2 moments before this is over. A reed pen dipping into fresh ink in a room that felt completely safe, and 5 seconds of gilded cedar that fell through the floor of history and never came back. The clepsydra dripped in the library hall, a bronze float rising tooth by tooth, turning a gear, moving a pointer toward the next hour. Demetrios had engineered the system 150 years earlier. 3 chambers, self-regulating, accurate to the minute. It had been running without interruption ever since. It did not know this was the last night it would be tended. Demetrios had been at his desk since the second watch. A grammateus, a scribe, 4th generation in the Museon service, assigned to the astronomy section, upper floor. Tonight, he was transcribing Hipparchus, the precession of the equinoxes, each value calculated and rechecked before the ink dried. The work required complete stillness. The building provided it. His ink smelled faintly sweet, carbon soot with acacia gum, mixed fresh that morning. The reed pen moved in small, precise strokes. Outside, the harbor smelled of something nobody in the library recognized. Not the usual brine, not cedar resin from the docks. Something beneath all of it, heavy, sticky at the back of the throat, the smell of pine tar beginning to cook, drifting in on a north wind. 6 hours from now, the scroll under his hand would be ash. He dipped the reed and kept writing. There was one building in Alexandria that everyone believed could not burn. We'll get there. Julius Caesar had not meant to start a fire. He'd come to Alexandria, chasing Pompey, the final act of a civil war meant to end in Egypt. He found Pompey already dead, his head delivered to the harbor by Ptolemaic courtiers who expected gratitude. What Caesar got instead? A city at war with itself, a throne dispute he hadn't asked to manage, and an army still weeks from reinforcement. The Ptolemaic forces held the streets. Caesar held the Brucheian, the royal district, and nothing else. The harbor was his lifeline. 72 Ptolemaic warships sat anchored in the Portus Magnus, blocking every exit. Their hulls sealed with black pine tar, their masts cut from Lebanese cedar, their rigging dry hemp rope, coiled stiff from weeks in the late summer heat. The Etesian winds had blown north to south for 3 days, unbroken, dry, the kind that makes pitch-sealed wood wait to ignite. Caesar gave the order. Flaming projectiles crossed the water. The first hole, took in seconds. Then the rigging. Then the space between ships. The Etesian wind drove the fire south, from ship to dock, dock to warehouse, faster than anyone on the quay could follow. The apothecary were burning. The smell reached the streets before the light did. Burning cedar carries differently than cook fire smoke. Deeper, resinous. It doesn't disperse, it clings. Those harbor warehouses held the library's most irreplaceable cargo. By royal decree, every ship docking in Alexandria surrendered its books on arrival. Owners received copies. The originals went to the warehouses first, sorted, cataloged, assessed, before transfer inland. The E.K. ploion, the from ships scrolls, the rarest items in the collection, hundreds of them, still waiting to be moved. The smoke from the apothecary smelled of burning papyrus, dry grass and char, sweet and acrid in the same breath. The smell of knowledge becoming carbon. Nobody moved them. On the dock, a grain carrier dropped his rope and turned toward the warehouses. He watched for one moment, then walked away from the harbor without looking back. There was nothing to carry, nothing to do. 4 hours. The fire had already crossed the docks. Caesar hadn't planned to destroy anything. He had not thought about the library in the moment he gave the order. The building on the hill with the cedar roof and the water clock, the 400,000 scrolls, was not part of his calculation. It simply wasn't. The smoke bent south, toward the Brochaean, toward the upper floors. In the library corridor, the clepsydra dripped. Nobody had sent a warning. Nobody had thought to. We'll come back to Demetrios. First, the smoke reached the walls. Inside the library, Demetrios did not yet smell smoke. The familiar things were still in order. Lamp oil burning low, the dry sweetness of papyrus in warm air, cedar from the shelving racks along the walls. The stone exterior was thick enough that street sounds barely entered. The Ptolemaic guards were at their posts. The dynasty had maintained this building for 250 years. Through conquest, famine, civil war, the library did not burn. This was a known fact. So known that nobody had thought to check it. What Demetrius did not know, the original scrolls of Aristotle's published dialogues were in a warehouse 200 meters north. The original records of Phoenicia, Carthage, Babylon, written nowhere else in the world. Same building. The ekploion, the most irreplaceable items in the entire collection, had been burning for over an hour. He dipped his pen. He wrote. Somewhere below, through the stone floor, the slow rhythm of someone grinding grain in the lower rooms. The kind of sound that tells you the world is still in order. A colleague appeared in the doorway, a geographer who worked the floor below. He mentioned a smell. Something from the harbor, he thought. Shrugged. There are always fires in the harbor district at night. He left. Demetrios set his pen down. Not because he heard anything definite. Not because the smoke had reached him yet. But the lamp flame had shifted, flickering differently, as if the pressure in the room had changed. A draft from somewhere it shouldn't come from. He reached for the nearest storage case. That was the moment. Not the fire, not the sound of the ceiling that was coming. This. A scribe, reaching for a case in a dark corridor, understanding before he understood. The body knowing the thing the mind had not yet named. He opened the case. Cedar and brass hinges. The papyrus smell of something that had waited safely for decades. He looked at what was inside. A Sophocles tragedy. One of the 120. 3rd century. Irreplaceable. He looked at the lamp. Then at the walls. The stone walls everyone trusted. Somewhere above, in the roof space, the cedar beams had been absorbing heat through the stone for 2 hours. Heat that stone can hold is not nothing. The temperature in the roof structure had been climbing since the 3rd watch began. The lacunaria, the gilded cedar caisson panels that lined the ceiling, did not know they were wood. They had always looked like marble from below. 2 hours. The clepsydra dripped in the hull. The clepsydra dripped. It was the only thing still keeping time. At some point in the 3rd watch, the cedar roof beams passed the threshold. What looked like marble from below was wood dressed in gold leaf. Above it, the void between ceiling and roof tiles had been filling with superheated gas for 2 hours. Heat looking for somewhere to go. The sound that came first was structural. A crack, the deep kind, from somewhere inside the building's bones. Then a pause. And then the ceiling came down. 5 seconds. Tons of gilded cedar and terracotta directly onto the marble columns. Directly onto the armaria, the alcoves lining the walls, each one packed floor to ceiling with scrolls and cedar cases. The falling mass pushed the air from the room in a single pulse. The papyrus, starved of oxygen, doesn't flame. It smolders. It cooks. At 100 degrees, papyrus fibers lose all moisture and become brittle as dried leaves. The ink, carbon soot, and acacia gum flaked from the curling surface and rose into the heated air. Not burning, dissolving. 40 minutes. Then silence. What Demetrios reached for in those last moments, we cannot know. What we do know is what didn't survive. Sophocles wrote 120 tragedies. 7 remain. Aeschylus, 90 plays. 7 survived. Aristotle's published dialogues, the polished ones, the ones written for public reading. None. What we have of Aristotle is his lecture notes, his rough work, the version of him that wasn't finished. The original records of Phoenicia, Carthage, Babylon, gone. The fire didn't choose. It just consumed. What also burned that night was a belief that the important things get protected because they are important, that there is always time, that someone is watching the harbor. That belief still burns. In 2015, men with bulldozers demolished the Library of Mosul, a deliberate erasure, planned and executed. Some manuscripts from Timbuktu survived because ordinary people wrapped them in cloth and carried them out in the dark before the fire arrived, like contraband. The difference between Timbuktu and Alexandria: someone in Timbuktu understood the danger before it started. Demetrios probably did not. The walls were stone. Everyone said so. Next week, a city that survived every plague, every siege, every invading army, until one morning the water in the wells tasted raw